welcome to Doors and Corners, a sci-fi and fantasy film commentary podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Zach. And every Friday we sit down and watch a science fiction or fantasy film and give our 2 cents on its quality, production, story, and trivia.
We watch the film together, but without sounds or visuals provided to avoid copyright issues. But if you do have access, we encourage you to join us and follow along.
Here, we like to keep things casual, and there may be discussions of spoilers or sensitive materials or language. But we do try and keep things clean and family-friendly. Ultimately, the goal of this podcast is to create the experience of us all sitting down and watching this movie together.
So get ready to hit that play button, because we're about to get started.
Damn Doors and Corners, that's where they get you.
Welcome back to Doors and Corners. I'm Brian.
Doors and Corners, and I'm Zach.
And tonight, we are continuing our journey through Phase 1 of the MCU with Iron Man 2.
And Brian, I have a very important question for you, okay? Very important.
Hit me.
When has a sequel been as good as the original? Not necessarily better than or worse than, but just as good.
It's hard because So, weird answer, because we did talk about this when we recorded about these films, so that's fun to talk about it. I think objectively, Aliens is exactly the same caliber of film as Alien. They're so different, people have their preferences because of the vibe and but like just on an objective quality of the film, I think that's what comes to mind for me as a good example.
That's very true. I suppose the disparity between them, given the genre changes, is what keeps me from thinking of those right off the bat.
Well, I have my preference.
I'm just thinking,
yeah. Go ahead.
Thinking of films like Iron Man and Iron Man 2, Captain America, the First Avenger, and Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Thor the Dark World. You have these movies as well, some others, Batman, Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
Batman Begins, The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Even The Mummy Returns, Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom. There's usually like a massive step up, Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Or a massive step down, Temple of Doom.
Yeah, it's a hard one because it's so hard to kind of pull your personal preference for what they did or didn't do. That's why I was kind of going with Alien, because I'm like, I had to step back. But yeah, that is hard. I think most of the good answers in my mind would be movies where the first one was good but not amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like where the bar was lower, if that makes sense.
So what we're left with in talking about Iron Man 2 is this as good as, better than, or worse than? And unfortunately, the answer is fairly universal of worse than.
Yes. I do think it's unfairly maligned to a certain extent, but I would argue, anybody who would be like, no, it's just as good, I'd be like, was it? Or are you just trying to make it that way in your head?
Yeah, because it has some things in it that I absolutely despise narratively and in terms of writing. The entire thing is a mess when it comes to story and script and just plotting.
Oh, this movie's plot is quite literally a conspiracy board with red string everywhere.
It's very true. And I can't sit here and say that, oh man, this is a good movie, but its highs are so high.
Mm-hmm.
And like the set design, the production design, the VFX and all that, absolutely incredible.
Well, this is a great example of... Go ahead. Sorry.
Nothing. I just wanted to add the action.
Yeah, the action is good. I was going to say, this is a great example of how good this creative team was, Jon Favreau's team, to be able to make a movie as good as this turned out under the conditions they made it. And that's where there is that alternate universe where if they had an extra year, which is usually what you get about 3 years, and a little less studio notes, what this would have potentially been. And I mean, it's easy to fall into the, oh, of course it would have been better. We don't know, because there's plenty of examples where that doesn't work either. But it is undoubtedly, it's hard to not think about what Favreau's, Iron Man 2 would have been just in its own isolated, creative chamber, so to speak.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Poor Jon Favreau.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know
mean-
everything that went on behind the scenes, but a lot of the things that they talk about, this movie burnt him out, and he hasn't directed a lot.
He got to
since
go play
this
with
movie
Star
came
Wars.
out. He got to go play with Star Wars. He was given a lot, like his producer credits behind the scenes, and his
Oh.
ability to get billion-dollar movies out is incredibly impressive. But he took a break for a while after this movie,
And,
outside of a little indie film, Chef.
yeah, I just say, and by no means does this make you happy, but he ain't hurting financially. But put it that way,
No.
with all of his producer work.
Oh my god, the amount of credits that he has throughout the entirety of the MCU, I genuinely believe the man is a billionaire.
Well, he and Robert Downey Jr. both were able to just, because they deserve credit. They absolutely deserve credit for jumpstarting this thing. And was it just them? Of course not. But were they massively important, and without them would it have been very different and possibly not as successful? Yeah, I think so. And so I'm glad that they both kind of got to ride that train financially all the way to the end. But it is, and there's a lot of stories. This movie is honestly the first example of the story of many directors and creatives that don't have the kindest words for the MCU machine. But at the same time, there were so many great things produced by the MCU machine. So it's always hard, because on one hand, I'm like, I feel bad for the people who got burned. But on the other hand, the vast majority of it I loved. So it's a mixed bag.
It is. But I am excited to get started on this one. It is a little bit on the longer side. Well, not so much on the longer side, but I don't know. It feels long sometimes.
When we get to phase 3, we'll be like, oh my gosh, these are long films.
Right. So, for those of you who don't know, if you've been living under a rock, this is Iron Man 2, which was made in 2010, 15 years ago now, man. 15 years ago. Do you feel old? I feel old.
I'm starting to feel old, man.
And it is PG-13, naturally. 2 hours and 4 minutes long, directed by Jon Favreau, written by Justin Theroux, and starring Robert Downey Jr., Mickey Rourke, Gwyneth Paltrow, Don Cheadle, Scarlett Johansson, Sam Rockwell, Samuel L. Jackson, and Clark Gregg, which is not Greg Clark, it is Clark Gregg. Because I can never get that right for some darn reason.
This might have one of the most stacked casts, though, for any of the non-team-up films. I mean, it's...
Oh, yeah, I mean,
that's
I
a
can
heck
keep
of a
going.
cast.
Do you want John Slattery, Gary Shandling, Paul Bettany, Kate Mara?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot here.
There's... And a lot of little performances that are great, but I am fully, before we even start this, I will say this, I am 100% on the bring a Hammer back train. I want him back in the MCU.
Me too. I was going to save this for later, but
Go for it.
The lack of use of Justin Hammer by Sam Rockwell in future MCU movies is absolutely horrendous. It's a crime. It's a sin.
Well, Sam Rockwell is just so good. I mean, and he's just a great actor in general. We need to watch Moon at some point. And
It's kind of boring, though.
It is a little bit, but it's also brilliant. It's like one of those, I get why it's a hard movie for people to watch, but it's also so good. Yeah. Maybe in the right mood for it, I guess. But he, in this film, he's awesome. I mean, we'll get to it, but yeah, I love him. And I want to talk about several specific parts of his performance as we get through this.
Agreed. All right, I am all ready for this. Ready for this.
Well, as usual, we encourage you guys, watch this along with us. It's fun to watch it with us. We have a good time, and a lot of the things that we say make a lot more sense when you're staring at what we're staring at. So we're going to hit that play button in 3, 2, 1, go.
Hey.
And the Paramount logo again. It's almost...
we still have the opening Paramount.
Yeah, it'll be gone soon.
And the slight voice-over going on, recapping the events of the previous movie. Or not quite recapping the events of the previous movie, but the ending of the movie with its shocking "I am Iron Man" ending.
Yeah. Well, and especially the fact that Robert Downey Jr. just like improv that, and it helped shape what officially became, one of the big running differences with the MCU, with the secret identities being rare instead of the the go-to trope, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, starting in Russia.
Opening in Russia. Because the big thing here is Ivan Vanko, who is the very misused Mickey Rourke as the villain in this thing.
He's an odd guy, but I do feel bad for kind of how he. I have not seen other deleted scenes of this film in a while, but I do know that he really got a lot of his performance just kind of dumped for a very generic villain.
You see, that is one of the problems that the early MCU did significantly. They did it less with Obadiah Stane. He actually had a lot of screen time in comparison to a lot of villains, but Mickey Rourke as Whiplash, the character of Malekith in Thor: Dark World, and the what was his name? The Red Skull. All had significant moments cut, and it's really sad because they were legit characters, great actors doing their performance, and now they're barely remembered because so much of their performance was destroyed.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't, I'm still have not ever seen The Wrestler. I know Mickey Rourke was kind of on, he was a hot commodity right before this movie was made. He had, got nominated for an Oscar and had a little bit of a comeback. And so it's a shame. I feel like when a studio is like, oh, let's get a name that's hot right now because he just put out this, amazing performance and got all this recognition. Let's use that to kind of get attention, but not actually take advantage of what you got by getting these people into your film.
Did that scene kind of remind you of like a Klingon death ritual?
A little bit. He definitely spilled some vodka.
Yeah. You see the notation of the arc reactor, and there's another name alongside Howard Stark. Huh?
Yep. This movie definitely had some things that they kind of just never revisited, right? I mean, we already talked about Justin Hammer as like so far not come back, but Howard Stark's kind of background, like some of the darker parts of his back, and then the Whiplash's character is kind of never been mentioned again. They even really never they like basically say that Tony Stark can't be in the Avengers, and Joss Whedon's script just like doesn't even bother to acknowledge that. And I mean, there's a lot of things that this movie like tried to do that just got forgotten about.
Yep. This scene is supposed to be very reminiscent of the building of the arc reactor in the first one, the way that it's filmed and chopped together.
Yeah.
You see his obsession with Tony Stark here. But you can already hear the difference in the music from the first one, which is another one of those things that's just very disappointing to me. That I so badly wanted this like great main Iron Man theme, and it just doesn't really exist, unfortunately.
Yeah,
because this movie kind of does away with it.
Yeah, this isn't bad music, but this feels like kind of generic action movie music.
It does. It feels almost more like Batman music to me for some reason.
Oh, we're dripping stuff. Dripping stuff on the ring. We're turning knobs. There's blue stuff going through tubes. I mean, that's the sign of something high tech going on.
Mm-hmm.
Now
it's actually
I was just gonna say the bird was actually Mickey Rourke's idea, right? That was one of his things.
Yeah, he had this like demand for a couple of specific things, which was the prison tattoos, the bird, and to be wearing his hair in a top knot. Like, okay, buddy.
It's like, all right,
whatever you do, I guess.
He's an actor. Do you want to talk about the deleted scene we lose here?
Sure. So there's an alternate opening for this movie that is much, much funnier, to be honest, but they cut it for some decent enough reasons, where Tony Stark, it opens with him vomiting into a toilet, which is not great in and of itself, but he's incredibly drunk, and they're making it sound like he's going to be dropping into some sort of dangerous situation as Iron Man, but he's hungover and he's complaining about being given Motrin because Motrin's a girl drug.
Yeah. Well, like Potts is
And
like,
then he,
like you look like you always do, hungover, right? Like basically implying that this is just normal for him, right?
yeah, and then he puts on the helmet and jumps out of a plane, and you're like, what is going on? And it's this sequence. There's a 38-second long sequence of him jumping out of the plane and falling in style through those giant hops and
He even gets hit by
fireworks and
one.
stuff into this, which is designed to immediately tell you that he has regressed slightly from his character development previously.
Yeah, it's generally speaking, I actually enjoy the character development that they attempted to give him. So okay, full credit to Caravan of Garbage for this observation. I had not noticed until they pointed it out how obvious his lifts are with his big baggy pants to make him taller.
Oh my gosh. You're totally right.
And you can see them, I guess, when he's hanging the photo later, like down in his garage. And so it's so that he's the same height as Gwyneth Paltrow. But I hadn't noticed until I watched their thing. So full credit to them. But it's like now I can't unsee it. He's basically wearing heels right now.
And bell bottoms.
Yeah, to hide them.
And in fact, that suit does not fit at all.
Yeah, like the only place
to be able to unsee this.
It fits okay around the shoulders, but that's it.
Yeah. I really hate that suit.
But yeah, I mean,
pinstripes.
they definitely, and this is, there's one of many examples here where, they wanted a darker story for Tony Stark to really show him fighting his demons, and the famous comic book run of a Demon in a Bottle, right?
Demon in a Bottle, where Tony Stark is a raging alcoholic and it almost destroys him.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, Tony Stark's greatest enemy is always himself.
Yeah. But, Marvel was like, I'm not sure we want all the kids who loved Iron Man 1 to watch Tony Stark as an alcoholic. And, for better or for worse, that was one of the big studio notes that influenced the direction of this film.
It wasn't just that. It was also in somewhat intervention from one of the major producers, who is Robert Downey Jr.'s wife, who was worried that playing that type of role again would potentially cause him to relapse.
Yeah, that's right. Susan is her name, right?
Yes, Susan Downey.
Yeah, she's, from what I've read, she's actually quite the partner. She stuck with him for, through it all. So, and it's like, I don't think that, and that's one of those, I think people would be like, oh, it immediately would make the movie better if it's darker. And I'm a big, as much as there are some great dark movies out there, especially great dark superhero films, I do think it's a very flawed thinking to just automatically think darker movie means better movie. It's a
Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
A well done dark movie can be amazing, and a poorly done dark movie can be very mediocre. Just like so it's one of those where I kind of reject the hypothesis, but I'm still curious about how that movie would have gone for sure.
Same. I think that they're lucky to have avoided the curse of the Dark Knight, because everybody sat there and went, "Ooh, Dark Knight, dark, better, serious, better," and it really ruined some good movies out there.
Yeah,
not unlike the Battlestar Galactica effect, where they killed the Stargate franchise and similar. The casting here of John Slattery as Howard Stark, really good casting. He played the role all the way through several TV shows and movies, all the way up to Endgame, where he got to appear in person. Yeah,
it's so. That one was one of those. I mean, he's great. I no denying he's great, but I do wish they had the continuity there. And I know that it's older versus younger. When they do First Avenger and when they get into Agent Carter and some of that stuff. But it's because they just don't look anything alike. And I am totally. What's the actor's name? The other actor from First Avenger.
Oh, I can't remember.
And he was great too.
Distracted anyway.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with with this actress?
Oh yeah, I've seen her in many things, but she was in the Fantastic Four movie that I still haven't seen that I'll have to see before we do it.
That's correct. This is her only scene in the movie, and this is the best performance she's ever delivered in a superhero movie.
I've seen her in other things that she's been perfectly fine in, but
Mhm.
sorry, I've always chuckled at the whole "I don't like to be handed things," little character trait that he's had all through these.
They keep a couple of this up, including the fact that he never lets anybody else drive him anywhere. I think there's only like one other time that you see him being driven, and it's when he's in the back of the car with Spider-Man in Spider-Man Homecoming.
That or
Otherwise, he's always the one driving.
Yeah, or he lets his lets Friday drive him in his helicopter in Civil War, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, another human being. You're right. I hadn't thought of that. This whole sequence, I think, is amazing. By the way, this is one of those scenes I think works. It's definitely him being a little bit, overly flippant, a little overly childish, but it's just charming and it's funny. And I think everybody enjoys watching anybody in the government kind of get a little bit of a poke. We just, we enjoy that as citizens of this country. We like seeing the people in power basically being told no. So there's definitely a little bit of that in here too. But I still enjoy this sequence a lot.
Yeah. The prostitution joke. Fantastic. Of course not. You're a senator. This is the late great Gary Shandling, perfect actor for a
swarmy senator,
goofy, schmarmy senator.
Oh yeah, the kind of senator that has. I don't know how to say this. Has had relations with very young women.
Mm-hmm. And they even bring that up when they have his character return in Winter Soldier.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Hydra.
Yeah.
So here we got Justin Hammer.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I just was gonna say I love Sam Rockwell so much. I've always loved Sam Rockwell. I remember him first from Galaxy Quest.
Oh yeah. I don't have a last name. That's he's.
Criminal number 17.
Yep. He is one of those actors. Has he been in some bad movies? Yes. I can't think of a bad performance he's turned in though, honestly. Like there might be some. I'm not saying that I know that for sure, but I can't think of any.
Yeah. So it does need to be pointed out that technically he did return as Justin Hammer in one episode of What If. So
he voiced.
There is that. Uh-huh.
Okay.
So there's that. But okay. I love him. I love his performance in this.
Sorry. I love this isn't Canada joke.
Also, the idea of the United States Senate only having a single weapons contractor. What? But
yeah.
This I'm not entirely satisfied with Justin Hammer as a character, which we'll talk about a little bit more.
Yeah. No,
because now we're getting into a real interesting spot.
Yep. Here you go. This line right here is such a great. Look, it's me. I'm here. Deal with it. Let's move on. It's just like such a little double. I don't know what you call that. Just it kills two birds with one stone.
A little meta commentary.
Oh yeah.
First major recasting.
Yeah. And I didn't know this till years after this movie was made. When I forget which interview I saw it or heard it in first, that he was actually the first pick of Favreau for this character. It wasn't Terrence Howard. Actually, he wanted Don Cheadle the whole time. And
the studio wanted Terrence Howard so badly they paid him $4.1 million for his role in Iron Man.
Yeah. Yeah, he was. It's just weird in hindsight. It's so weird to think that Terrence Howard made 9 times as much as Robert Downey Jr. in that film.
But a funny thing, when they decided to can Terrence Howard for one reason or another, or he walked, it varies depending on the testimony that you hear. I have trouble trusting Terrence Howard's word because he's a total nutter butters. But they called up Don Cheadle and were like, 6-movie deal. We need your answer within an hour. And he's like, I'm at my daughter's birthday party.
Yeah,
we're playing laser tag.
Yeah, it's that interview. That seems crazy. Like,
yeah.
I've
absolutely nuts.
Yeah, I mean, Don Cheadle's never come across as somebody who I feel like is crazy, but that story just seems like odd.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. But yeah, I like Don Cheadle in this role. Did you know that Robert Downey Jr. was not actually the first choice by Jon Favreau
No, it
for
was
Tony Stark?
oh gosh, I know this name and
You should know this name. He's sitting in the same room as Tony Stark.
well, it was Sam
Rockwell.
Rockwell. That's Sam Rockwell. That's right. I'm like, I literally just saw this in a retrospective, and my brain is not working. It is failing me.
Yeah. No. But yeah, fascinating, isn't it?
I do love this little montage of the failed attempts, the style of them, especially the Chinese because it looks like it's a 50s sci-fi movie. And then, man, this like makes me hurt every time I see it where he turns. Just like oh man.
And that's one of the big problems if you had some sort of mech suit like that is what happens if you turn too fast and you don't have regulators because it will turn faster.
Yeah.
It will destroy you like that. A lot of people even think that might be a reference to Doctor Strange, or that Doctor Strange could have referenced that pilot in essentially being asked to do a procedure on an Air Force colonel with, breakages in his back and stuff like that.
I remember that where he's driving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do. So the this whole little big montage here where I know this is a comic book world. I do think that a senator on camera saying like, F you, like it does break that. Not that this is some like hyper believable scenario, but a little bit of like
I don't know. They're getting weird these days, man.
They're
getting weird these days. A sitting congressman just said that he wanted to ask Donald Trump if he could be the Pope of Greenland. It was all said in,
well,
but it's funny.
Yes. And never mind. I was about to start talking about Donald Trump, and I'm like, I don't want to talk about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So,
but
he didn't make your work.
Politicians are getting weird.
Oh yeah, no, you're not wrong. But like you pointed out, this movie is 10 years old now. The
15.
Oh, 15. Sorry, yeah, you're right. I also heard Mickey Rourke actually had a lot of creative input on how his suit looks.
Yeah, I heard that as well.
It's interesting here too that they definitely elevated the whole kind of the wireframe Stark Cave, but like everything's kind of wireframed and it's not just like something he's manipulating. It's like kind of hitting the whole screen.
Yeah, he souped up his stuff a little bit. I do like the little wall of suits there. That's very Iron Man.
Oh yeah,
he would absolutely do that. I mean, he has. There's entire rooms of Iron Man suits in the comics in some places. Honestly, this blood toxicity thing, I get what they were going for. I think that this is one of the aspects that the movie could actually kind of leave out.
Yeah. No, there's so many things that Tony Stark could have been dealing with that would have been interesting and would have been very much a challenge and ways to kind of help him grow and learn as a character. And this just acted like this kind of odd, like they wanted the ticking clock aspect. They wanted, numbers getting worse as movie goes on. And they easily could have gotten the character moments, the character beats without this thread. Not to mention, and this is jumping ahead, but the entire making a new element in his garage is definitely just pure sci-fi, whatever.
It's pure comic book nonsense.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of like writing nuance to some of the stuff that they were doing, like it's a lot of it has to do with the legacy of his father. So the blood poisoning, it's like his blood is poisoned, and he's trying to reconcile stuff with the legacy of his dad, and so it's him getting over the bad parts of the legacy. It's supposed to be a physical manifestation of his bloodline being poisoned and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, that's a good idea, but you need to really run with it.
Yeah.
And they don't run with it enough.
Well, yeah, it's the kind of thing
part of that.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, part of that is the fact that I think that throughout this movie, I think that they reshot some of it to remake the character of Howard Stark to a good guy. I think they were going to make him a genuine bad guy.
So watch this right here. When he's about to get up on the table with this, you can totally see his
Yeah, those are some significant lifts
Anyways,
there.
yeah, I saw that earlier today, and I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, no, you're right. If it's the kind of thing where you either fully commit to those themes of him and his dad and his history and or you just find a way to have him have some character beats, move the story along. The halfway just becomes one of many plot threads in this film that become just kind of drag. I do think this is another movie though where Gwyneth Paltrow puts another good performance in this film. It's just a good foil for him, kind of a not even a foil, but just she does a good job in a little bit that she has less to do in this film, I think, but she does a good job in my opinion.
I agree. Like that scene there, it wasn't quite a tracking shot, but it was a long shot of them just walking through the garage, and he's just like doing stuff with all of his toys, and she's trying to talk to him about stuff, and he's just fencing with her, spouting off nonsense and fighting back and stuff like that. It worked really well. And I think that they both did excellent performances there, and she keeps that up through the movie. Their interactions get a little bit obnoxious at one point. At a point in the movie, I should say.
Yeah.
And let's see. I really think that this movie should have been structured differently. We've been over that a couple times. But I think that they could have gone with an initial idea that introduced Justin Hammer as the actual villain of the movie, and then having separate, almost like inferior versions of Iron Man that Justin Hammer's trying to build give them trouble, and you would have like one for Tony, one for Pepper, one for Rhodey. You could even do one for Black Widow if you wanted. And you're using comic book characters like Whiplash and Crimson Dynamo and Ghost. And I think that there could be a really interesting premise in that.
Sorry, I'm like, so this scene, I will say, Jon Favreau, he's much more famous as a director. He has moments as an actor that I really enjoy, and that one little line there where, and he has multiple moments like that throughout the MCU, but the whole like, what is that? It's called dirty boxing, and just he has line delivery that I enjoy. He has good comedic timing. Yeah,
fantastic. Do you want to talk about everything with the Black Widow casting and all that?
Well, so I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast before. I adore Emily Blunt. She is I want a Mass Effect movie with her as Commander Shepard, like more than anything in the world. And she was absolutely wanted for this role, would have been handed this role if she hadn't had contractual obligations that kept her from being able to do it. Scarlett Johansson is a perfectly great actress. She's great, and she did a good job on the role. Like, I actually don't have any complaints. I just, in my mind, I'm like, we could have had Emily Blunt in this role. And I'm just like, oh. And I mean, if people don't agree with me, that's fine. This is totally just my own. I think that Black Widow could have been introduced in this movie and had just a tiny bit, just a little bit of like a cameo instead of all they gave her. I do not enjoy. It's weird because the whole over-sexualization thing, it's very much in the comic books. So it's like, you can't say like, oh, they added it for the movies. Like, no, have you seen female characters in comic books? But
yeah,
it also definitely seems unnecessary in this film. And I don't know. What do you think?
I think that okay. I'm going to figure out how to phrase this. I think she actually is a good lead-in for further MCU stuff. I think that she could have a really good place. Having this assistant that's able to pose in, they're able to slot her in well.
Mhm.
I think that she is actually fairly well placed. There's a lot of criticism of the amount of her that's in this movie. I think that it actually works in comparison to other roles in here, like just kind of the exposition dump that is Samuel L. Jackson in this movie.
Yeah.
Giving her that part, showing off her covert skills, the over sexualization can work in a character like her. If it was the over-sexualization of Pepper Potts, if it was one of the other movies where if they went for like a super sexy, super sexualized Jane Foster or Sif, or Agent Carter or something, and be like, this is weird. But this is a spy. This is a person who literally uses sexuality and looks as a weapon.
Yeah.
As a tool.
It doesn't seem out of place for her.
I don't mind it as much as I probably should if you listen to some folks, but
I
also think that she wasn't used properly at the end of the movie in order to make her character actually matter.
Yeah. No, I don't mind her being in this film. I agree with you. And they could have used her, roughly the same amount. And I think that, especially if I think that people who complain that she is great the way that she is don't understand the character in the comic books, and it's like, if you have a problem with it, that's fine. But like, one, that is how there were absolutely real programs that taught that. So if you can not like that, you're welcome to not like that, but that's also a real thing in the world. So grow up a little bit. And I also think that it's done, but it's not like it's way overdone. I mean, honestly, the worst we got was right there when Tony Stark pulls up like her modeling photos, and we move on. Like it's not like they show her change more graphically than they do in the back seat. They actually keep that pretty tame. So I think people like to just you're supposed to be bothered when another woman's portrayed sexy, and it's like, I just calm down. Yeah. But at the same time,
I agree.
It is still one more thing in this movie that made it feel like it was just too crowded. So I do wish that they had just balanced her along with many other aspects of this film better than they did.
I very much agree. Again, my main issue is with kind of the third act of this movie. It just doesn't come together. Her presence, they give her an action sequence and a reason to be doing it that does make some sense, but it's not enough to kind of like justify all the complications of the movie that they're going through. The character itself, I think part of it is the fact that I hate the comic book portrayal of Black Widow in many instances. So this works for me a little bit better because it's simplified, it's sensible, and well portrayed, well acted. Because the character in the comics is just started as a villain. She was a bad guy. She actually premiered fairly close to Iron Man. She was actually first introduced in an Iron Man comic, Tales of Suspense number 52 from 1964. And it was the Crimson Dynamo, who was a Russian character, and his handler was the femme fatale of Black Widow. And she eventually she was like some sort of long-lived super soldier who was a bad guy, and then she was a good guy, and it's just kind of bounced around, and whose side was she on, and it's convoluted, and she was actually like a super-powered person, you know? Yeah.
So
anyway, rant over.
I was going to say, really fast here, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as the movie goes on. What do you think about, as you mentioned Justin Hammer being misused, I think, and I'm not the first person to say this, I'm not going to act like this is my original idea, but I do think Justin Hammer would have been a better character if they had made him more competent. If they had kept the performance. Like, the performance is great. Like, Sam Rockwell can keep the quippy, fun, kind of quirky, he has a lot of that stuff, but don't make him an idiot.
They made him an inferior version of Tony Stark when I think that he should have been a dark version of Tony Stark. He, not necessarily as smart as him, but he should have been competent and cunning.
Well,
And he has some kind of rat cunning, but he does nothing in this movie. Even like the redesign of the War Machine armor, which some people have pointed out as, oh, he did that. He had Vanko that whole time.
yeah,
Did he redesign War Machine, or did he just have Vanko do it?
yeah. He doesn't. It's hard when you as much as, again, I love Sam Rockwell and his performance is great, but it's hard to believe, based on what he does in this film, that he ever would have became as successful as he's portrayed in this film.
Yeah.
So this whole sequence, though, just to jump to the F1 race here, this is a freaking amazing sequence. Like, just from a cinematography, special effects, the action beats, the pacing, this is really good.
This scene has better special effects better visual effects in some parts of it than you see even through Spider-Man No Way Home or Endgame, you know? It's kind of crazy. But part of that is the amount of physical props that they use.
Yeah, they did a lot
real
of
explosions, real cars, real sets, instead of it all just being CG crap.
Yeah. It's just, the effects work is amazing. The tasteful amounts of slow motion, which I'm perfectly fine with.
It is tasteful. And I like that kind of lightsaber effect that they've got there.
Yeah, with the glowing edges.
But, like, if you notice the way that the fence bent and everything, that wasn't that wasn't CG. They actually did crush the fence, and then they added the car. I didn't like this scene. I didn't like him driving on the thing with the F1. I didn't think that Pepper should have been in the middle of this action sequence.
No,
I think that she shouldn't have been anywhere near it.
Happy should have just gone by himself. It makes perfect sense for Happy to be there. But, yeah, not Pepper.
And they would have saved a lot of budget on having the little car weaving through F1 racers, you know?
Yeah. Ooh, man. The brutal crash.
Yeah, that would have killed him.
Yeah.
And then,
sorry.
yeah, I like the whip. I like the discharge.
Yeah.
I think that it's good design.
Yeah, this whole where he turns, just the cars piling up, and I mean that definitely, like, so right there, like that's a trailer shot if you've ever seen one, right there with the cars flipping behind him. But it still is very cool.
It is. It's really cool. It's really cool.
I genuinely, and maybe this is just getting older, I genuinely feel bad thinking of just the no-name people that you don't see that always die in these sequences. Like there's just always some, wife or kid that just lost, like, their dad or their husband or something, and it's, I get why these movies can't dwell on that. That's not what these movies are for. But there's just the part of me that's can't help but to, whenever this happens, like, some Formula One driver just got killed.
Yeah. I think that is you getting old, but at the same time, I've also been there in a couple scenes of movies recently. I'm just like, that's a lot of civilians.
There's a lot of, yeah. What is the term for that? Collateral damage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like how they have Tony, like, he's not a coward. He actually is trying to take on this guy, even though he doesn't have his suit. And I think that that's I don't know. It's a good character moment, even though you see this guy being reckless and all this stuff.
Yeah, he's not running
away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I also loved the little effect of when he was walking, flipping his whips around and stuff. The little detail of the asphalt underneath getting scored. I enjoyed that a lot. Now, does his suit, does it, like, wrap around the front and protect him somehow here? I never quite understood the protection from getting hit by a 8,000-pound Rolls Royce.
Right. No, I wondered that too. And I think that it is supposed to be that his suit is protective, that he has like a lower harness on it. You do see it going into the bottom line. So the idea of it potentially having something around the hips that is taking the brunt of the damage.
Yeah.
But like, I don't like this scene at all. I don't like her screaming. It's obnoxious to me.
You don't need her.
She shouldn't be there.
Because I actually I like the fact that Happy's out here trying to do his job, to be Tony's bodyguard. Although, man, this suit up scene, man,
it's the best.
So good.
Like, this armor is also based heavily off of the Silver Centurion armor from the comics, where he had the red and silver instead of red and gold. I don't remember the exact context of its existence, but it was a motif he went for a while, and I really like this design. I like the idea of that simplified suit that's portable, which is out of the comics. His original suit was carried around in a briefcase.
So
back when everything was about capacitors.
Yeah. So is Whiplash like deflecting repulsor blasts with his whips?
I guess so. I'm not going to say it's great, but it looks good.
I mean, it does look good. I like this. And this is where you have, we talked about this in the first Iron Man. You have a direct, lesson he learned here being applied with Thor in the Avengers, which is cool.
Yeah. Essentially, for those of you who may have forgotten, one of the running themes with Iron Man that's actually really clever and really good is that he has a habit of anytime something goes wrong with one of his suits, the next version of the suit fixes that problem, and the filmmakers show it off. In this particular case, he has now seen that it can be disabled and vastly hurt by electrical discharge. And in the following appearance in The Avengers, the first time he suits up going after Thor hits him with lightning, and it actually absorbs and overcharges the suit instead of damaging it. Yeah. So that's it's a nice
I love how, as I forget if you were the first person to point that out to me, but that's one of those things that through the whole MCU is super cool to watch him. It's a thread that I do love that the writers kept up.
Mm-hmm. This upcoming sequence is probably the best in the movie. This is when you have real character stuff, you have real relationship, you have good dialogue, and everything about this scene, in my opinion, is good.
Yeah.
Well,
there is something to just put.
It should have been.
Yeah. But there's something too about when you strip things down and you just quite literally Mickey Rourke's case, just take two good actors, put them in a room, and write them some good dialogue, and just let it go. And I mean, you get some of the best things ever in film.
Yeah.
And he's speaking a lot of. Go ahead, sorry.
No, go for it. I was just going to comment.
I was say even if
wardrobe.
Yeah, even when he's kind of spouting off some technobabble here, it still works because it's just delivered well and with sincerity.
Yeah.
What are you going to say about wardrobe?
That's just the design that they use. Like, you already seen that he's kind of a dirty, scrubby man, lots of tattoos and stuff, but this scene there's so much character in his body. He's strong, he's big, he's greasy, he's tattooed, he's scarred, and he's kind of hunched in a way that is protective without being weak.
Yeah. Well, he is, and this is jumping way further in the MCU. He is a villain who could have had a Killmonger level arc if he had been used better, as far as just a memorable villain that had a very understandable motivation for his actions.
Well, for one thing, that line that they just used, "If you make God bleed," is actually a line that they used in the marketing. Okay, in the marketing coming up to Avengers Endgame. They had this one video that they put out that was this like giant retrospective on the MCU, kind of leading up to things without being an actual trailer because they didn't want to show anything from Endgame. And they have it "Make God Bleed," and it uses the scene from Infinity War when he makes Thanos bleed. And I was just like, ooh, that's good. Yeah. I like it.
I kind of like the scene a tiny bit too, just because there is the trademark with them. Pepper and Tony have a good mixture of serious intermixed with, the attempts at trying to be lighthearted. Tony's usually trying to do something to kind of keep it from getting too serious, and Pepper is like actually upset. Here with the whole like I cooked, I don't know. It's a little bit, but I like it. Just funny.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I've been cooking.
He tried.
He did. 3 hours. You think I've been for 3 hours? It's like an omelet.
Right? And it's so man.
Oh man.
There's one of the big mistakes that they make in this movie is having the character of Whiplash, Ivan Vanko, essentially like they fake his death. And I think that was a mistake. I think that they needed him and Tony to interact more over the course of the movie for their relationship to actually mean something. This goes back to what I was saying earlier, that if they had made it with various villains, like 3 kind of inferior Iron Mans, but having kind of a main one that is a very much kind of a heart-to-heart type of villain for Tony Stark himself, I think it would have hit harder. I think it would have been a bit better.
Oh, and you could have, we talked about this earlier with the palladium poisoning. They're trying to have Tony deal with his legacy. I mean, that was a big theme in the first film, right? And this one, the legacy of his dad and where things came from, and the fact that things are never quite as clean as we'd like them to be in our pasts. And, we don't meet your heroes. I mean, there's so many themes there. And Whiplash is quite literally, they already set it up to do that. They already, with his dad being, they're on parallel journeys. The idea that they both are trying to kind of live up to their finish their dad's work and live up to that. And they could have used him to do a lot of that same character work with Tony, while at the same time giving 2 great actors, chances to to have, like you had those great Jeff Bridges, Robert Downey Jr. moments together. I mean, you could have structured this movie to have had some great things going on, some great scenes, a much more personal conflict with the villain. And I think you would have ended up with a better film. I'm not smart enough to articulate exactly how to structure that or put that together, but I am confident that it would have existed.
Yeah,
or at least could have existed.
I very much agree. Could have existed. Good way to put it. I agree. I do like this scene in the way that it's structured, with like the bomb and the guy who comes in who looks vaguely enough like him, and it's got the thing, and it's all visual. It's not spelling it out for you. Wow, kind of spelling it out, but yeah, I don't know. I like it. I think it's a good sequence.
I think it's interesting that he trusted, like maybe not trusted, but he just demonstrated how he's a powerful, capable guy. But when those 2 guards grabbed him, and like even the subtitles were like literally just shouting in French is all it said, that he kind of just went with it after he had just killed the first guard that came up. I don't know. It was interesting little, maybe he just understood, or maybe it's just like one of those things where it's like you just roll with it because the movie's got to got to get you to this next scene.
I think that there is an aspect of, you just got to roll with it. But at the same time, I also think that this is a guy who would be able to understand when he's in custody, and he might be able to get out. But if you're suddenly faced with 4 big guys, even he's not going to be able to get out of that, and it's better to just be arrested again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all this is just obviously such an act by Hammer,
Oh yeah, he's
like
he's wooing
he's
him.
playing it up. Much,
yeah, he's like he's absolutely, he's trying to show off. I mean, he's a peacock man for sure.
Mm-hmm. And
I do love
is...
sorry, the guy bringing the dinner, just that subtle, like the shaking and everything. It's just great little bits of like people they're a little scared of us.
Yeah. This is also supposed to be very much Jarvis. This is what Jarvis would have looked like if they had been comic book accurate, and you can kind of see why they're like, oh, we're gonna not do, we're gonna not do Alfred Light for Jarvis.
Got to say too, pinky rings are just inherently demasculating. There's just something
I was
about
gonna
them.
say douchey.
Yeah, there's that too. Oh man.
Yeah, the whole like kill his legacy thing. I think that's a really good way to go. A really good thing to do.
Oh yeah.
As a story beat, and I wish they'd followed through with it a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 movies worth of plotting in here for sure, if they had fleshed out better, and yeah, if they had not gotten bogged down. One of my, I mean, this.
The do you speak English? Like you realize you didn't think of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were immediately too here saying, Whiplash, being like he's not playing dumb, but he is, being cautious, which makes sense. He's not going to trust this guy right away. He knows this guy is just a douche guy who wants to use him. He doesn't actually care about him.
Yeah.
Although it's funny, the whole like language barrier thing is definitely a great prelude to one of my favorite deliveries in the entire film, where he just screams, "I don't speak Russian."
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. This scene I thought was pretty excellent. Rhodey's interactions with Tony here. One of the retrospectives that I watched on it pointed out, like, oh, it's such a good scene of these 2 friends together, and there's this understanding and brotherhood, and then 10 minutes later, they're beating the crap out of each other in the best action sequence of the movie. So it's a little jarring in that way, but it's still such a good scene.
It is. Well, and this movie, almost all of its kind of quieter beats are very good. And I mean, part of that's because they have great actors. I mean, they casted this movie very well. But it's when this movie gets out of the quieter sequences that it hits or misses. It's very it's not consistent in its quality.
Yeah. But this was actually the scene I remember watching this and just going like, dude, Don Cheadle's great.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, this is the scene that kind of sold me on him. Because the only thing I'd ever seen him in, other than this, that I recall, was freaking Oceans.
Yeah, the Ocean movies.
11.
Where he's doing his weird British accent.
And, it's all in Barney. Roll out. It's just like really over the top, really goofy. And I don't know. I saw this and I was just like, dang, this guy can act, and man, he can do such a good American accent. Turns out it was the other way around, but
Well, is that supposed to be smoking? See, this has been in your body. Every now and then I really appreciate the when a character just says the obvious thing that the audience is thinking, like that.
Yeah.
It's there are times where that can be very effective. I also appreciate the very subtle, just they didn't bother to show anything, like just under the shirt, he wouldn't want to show it, there's a lot of subtle beats to how this whole scene plays that's both realistic but also just effective.
I very much agree.
I'm having trouble thinking for some reason of Don Cheadle films that I had seen, but I definitely seen him in more than just the Ocean films. I knew I already liked him when he was cast. I wasn't, obviously I wasn't super invested in the MCU at this point. I was like, oh, Iron Man 1 was great, and I was like, oh, that's weird, they had to recast him. But I knew Don Cheadle, and so it didn't bother me going into this film. I wasn't caught up in any kind of controversy about it.
Yeah. Apparently his big ones are Crash and Traffic, so he should stay out of cars.
Traffic is a fantastic film. Crash is a mixed bag. For an Academy Award winner.
Yeah.
It's a mixed bag. It's not as bad as people make it out to be, and it definitely shouldn't have won Best Picture. It's somewhere in the middle.
Didn't know that it had won Best Picture.
It did. It's one of the more controversial winners of Best Picture.
Yeah.
I've always okay. This is one of those movie things where somebody can just walk up and like from a terminal just like crack a password. That always just like that's not how it works in real life. Like ever, like you can crack passwords, absolutely. You crack passwords with other computers that do things. It's not like there's some keystroke, thing that just like, nope, I'm in. Especially not with like custom private OSs.
I agree, but
I mean,
also
it's a very movie thing.
like directly with like I sit 2 seats down from my company accounts uh security lead, and if he can do some crazy stuff, he has a he has a custom made mug that on one side says black hat and on the other side says white hat, because that's like his background when it comes to hacking. If you're not familiar with computer hackers, white hat is a hacker who will hack for good things, and black hat is a hacker who will hack for bad things.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I work with some really interesting people.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I'm not
And
denying at all that
they
can't
can do some crazy stuff.
Yeah. But the idea like walking up to some custom OS by a private company and just like in 5 seconds, I'm just gonna, in 30 keystrokes, hack
but any custom OS is just going to be Linux with a facelift.
maybe. But that was a I want to say almost a 30-digit password or something like that. He went through. It's just like, nah. I'm harping on this way too long. It is the movie cliche that like you just walk up and just like tap 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 and ooh, the password was broken. How did that work? Did he upload a program? Did he have another computer to do it? Did he have some kind of No. He just hit the keyboard.
He'd be able to. Yeah,
he tapped on the keyboard.
Bypass something and run like a rainbow on it or whatever.
Huh.
But yeah, it is one of those cliches. It's just one of those things where I'm kind of reevaluating how I see certain things in movies. It's not like freaking NCIS having the absolute worst hacking.
Oh my gosh, were they both typing together?
Movies. Yeah. It stuff like this isn't unforgivable to me. Like
no, it's not. It's not. It's also one of the fastest and cheapest ways to signal, see, he's smart with computers. Does he bypass the password? So the birthday scene here. Sorry, we just like talked right through that, talking about generalizing passwords. Oh man, the birthday scene.
I do. You see things like the scene that they just had right there with Black Widow. I feel like that really works, and setting her up as this side character where that there's going to be something iffy about her. And anybody who's not familiar with the comics or didn't read any of the casting stuff on it is going to immediately think to themselves, she's a bad guy who's pushing his buttons on behalf of Justin Hammer. She's a plant.
Yeah.
Right? But in the movie, but I don't know. She says things to him throughout the movie that are important.
Yeah.
That fulfills a role that other characters wouldn't necessarily be able to fulfill properly. So I don't know. A lot of people saying her role is overblown or useless. I think they're wrong. I think that she belongs in this movie to a large extent.
Yeah. Oh no, I know.
Being kind of a backdoor to the Avengers like that is a really clever way of doing it.
Yeah. No, I think that she's an easy scapegoat to point out, for some of the broader flaws of this film, where it was, doing too much work to try to set up other things instead of being its own story. And so she's just a nice, easy target for those general frustrations. When, she doesn't deserve, her role in this film and her acting in this film doesn't deserve quite as much vitriol as it gets at times. And I think, too, a lot of those comes from, people who kind of make up their minds about placements and lists and, when they decide, a movie's guilty of this. And they kind of just like, that's a decision, and it's kind of etched in stone in their minds and on the internet. So one thing I will say, this scene is, sorry, the whole peeing, and you can drink it. It's just, oh gosh.
Oh, so he made a still suit.
Yep. Oh man. So how much of what he's wearing right now is practical versus CG?
In this particular scene,
It's the
this
legs
is
are
one
all-
that's a little bit more realistic. I believe that he's wearing the head, the shoulders, and the hands. I believe that the biceps, arms, and legs, and like back are CG. Not 100% positive on that.
Yeah. The whole where he squats down and does like his little, like it's just like the movement was very interesting there. I'm just trying to imagine doing that move in armor. Man, you'd have to have some good
Right.
articulation down in the groin area.
The groin.
I
Yeah,
do.
I read some people complaining about this scene. I really like it. I think it's great.
The I'm trying to think there's a bunch of like Hollywood extra hot girls out there that are in this scene that just like this movie is their go-to. They never did anything else, but they're like, I was in Iron Man 2. See me shaking my
Right.
boobs. Sorry, I don't know how to say that. It's just like, it's what there's like girls in that scene that's like they will revisit this movie their entire lives, going like, look at this.
I was thinking that about the dancers at the beginning.
Yeah, that's true. I was in that.
So he's pointing at this guy. We glossed over the brief cameo by Elon Musk earlier in the movie. I don't want to miss too many here, but this gentleman, DJ AM, he actually passed away a couple years ago.
He's a big deal,
But
isn't he?
he's a big deal. Not my area of expertise, I'm afraid, but yeah, he's pretty good.
I do love the fact that they ended up in the weight room immediately.
Right?
It's just fun.
I love the music. I love Queen. I'm a big fan of Queen.
Yeah.
And I feel like they haven't used Queen enough in the MCU. I love the way the bullets rip to the sound of the beat.
Well, and I also love the fact that Rhodes would be a better like fighter, undoubtedly, when it comes like hand-to-hand technique.
Yeah.
But he's not nearly as experienced in the suit yet.
Yeah. I genuinely like this fight scene between them, though. I think that it's fun. I think it has a brutality to it, and I like the ending. I like the way that they kind of wrap it up. Well, I wasn't a big fan of what they call the sidekick later. But this whole back and forth exchange, and then you have this moment that's just that switch right there.
Yep.
And that, which was a practical suit, and the movement of it, there's something almost horror movie about its movements for a second. And you see the reflection in the glass there.
Yeah.
You do see the kind of change between practical and CG suit back and forth there, which is, a little jarring. I love the silver suit, though. I genuinely do.
It is good. And I mean, there is also something very iconic about just the hand up with the repulsor glowing in it. Like, it's just a very iconic, like, profile or silhouette, so to speak.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
It does work. And, just the transition between... And they did the work. They did the work to make you love Tony Stark. And at the same time, you're watching him behave in a way that's so just like...
moron.
You feel genuine sympathy for him, and you're also pissed at him at the same time. That is a hard balance to hit with a character.
And having been around some people in, you could say, life-threatening situations that are comparable to his Palladium issue here, they'll act like that, and it's just like, you get it. You get the acting out, you get the desperation, but man, you just like, you want to slap them and be like, what the heck is wrong with you, you nutter butter?
Yeah.
It's a thing. It's a thing that exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way the music, this is actually one of the more effective, I think, pieces of music in that little sequence right there too. It's just sad. You switch from Queen and this kind of serious but fun fight sequence, and then the movie shifts tone very effectively right there.
Yeah. And again, that's where you
Go ahead.
What?
No, go ahead.
No, I love Jon Favreau as a director. I think he's great, and I'm really excited for him directing more things in Star Wars, even though he also directed the worst episode of The Mandalorian, but I won't talk about that right now.
I love that you just randomly have a B2 sitting around. Because why not,
Hey, B2, man.
Well, it also would not be sitting out in the open like that next to it. It's just, I mean, I get it. It's some of the coolest set dressing around, but that's not, they don't do that.
Given that they just jumped to morning, though, do you think this is supposed to be Nellis?
Well, it wouldn't be Nellis with B2. It would be the base in Missouri. There's only one base that B2s fly out of, and it's in Missouri, I think, and it's like literally their base. And the fact that the bombers can reach anywhere on the planet from that one base is crazy. But I mean, it's out in the desert though, so I don't think that that's supposed to be that base. And I think they just they had a B2 there, they had a B1 there, they had a Stratofortress there, they had an F-22 randomly parked. I mean, it was literally like a Michael Bay, military.
They even had the Michael Bay-esque music.
It did. So here we go. We got Nick Fury dropping in at the donut shop.
Mm-hmm. And this was difficult to put together because there were a lot of contractual things that they had to work out with Samuel L. Jackson. He didn't know if he was going to be returning, and they thought that they might have to recast, which would have been really... supposedly they paid him extra so that way they wouldn't have to recast because they thought that it would look really bad to recast both of the major black actors from the first one.
Who's that super douchey producer that worked for Marvel that like it's a little bit legend, but it's happened enough that it's got to be some truth where he's like you can't tell them apart. Who's his name? It's like begins with a P.
Ike Perlmutter.
That guy.
That's not a producer. That was
he's like a billionaire.
Yeah,
high-end guys,
CEOs.
Right? Yeah. Just a human piece of like just a total racist, sexist,
Pig. Yeah, just absolutely horrible. I loved Caravan of Garbage's joke about how every time that one picture of him with Donald Trump appears, then the ominous music plays and they can't stop it from doing so.
Yeah, that was a good moment. But yeah, everything I've heard about him is that he deserves all the vitriol he gets, and just one of those people where it's like, can we just collectively as a society say like, no, you're an awful person. You don't get to keep this money. You don't get all this money. We're gonna put you. We're gonna put you on an island somewhere and just pretend like you don't exist.
That would be nice.
I do think Sam Jackson is good in this film, though. I mean, like you said, he's exposition jump. But if you're gonna get somebody to just ramble for a while, you can do worse than Sam Jackson.
That's true. He's got the voice, man. He's got the voice.
You could listen to the guy read a phone book and it would work.
You see, I mean, he's not there for me. I have this whole list of black men with incredible voices, many of which have died in the last 2 years, to the point of where I'm wondering if it's a conspiracy. He's not on that list for me. I really like him, but he's not James Earl Jones. He's not...
Well, he's definitely got his thing. I mean, he's very his own brand in a way. His delivery, his cadence, some of the phrases he's famous for. And no, he's not the top of the list, but I also think that he is a very charismatic guy.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying anything against him. I love the guy. Somebody broke down the amount of money he has earned from his movies based on the words he has said per movie and dialogue, and come up with the fact that he's gotten paid like $300,000 per use of the F word he's ever given in a movie.
That's awesome.
Like that's what you use mouth for. Math. Mouthy math. It's not my board.
So this whole sequence, this is an example to me where Sam Rockwell's doing, I'm sure, what he was asked to do, but the way that he kind of goes through this whole sequence where he's like trying to be funny and like, well, can you put that on? And he's like kind of it's a little bit too far in that just, I don't know, it rubs me a little bit I'm not even sure how to phrase this, but I don't like this part of just his character.
Yeah, it is a little strange. This whole interaction has always been strange to me. The drone thing. I did like how they brought the drones back and used them in What If. Had them get taken apart by the Wakandan army. But you see, this is the scene that bugs me when it comes to Sam Rockwell's character in here. Where I want him to be a villain in this moment. I want him to be a little scary, and instead they emasculate him. They continue to make him kind of pathetic.
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, it's another scene where I can't believe that he would have ever built, a company that from the public perception is like rivals Stark Industries.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah. So we do have the is it right here, the montage, or we're about to get it, where his bit of weapon, laying out the weapons to go into War Machine. I do think, I mean, It's ridiculous, but his delivery is so much fun that it is just a fantastic scene.
It is, and there's actually some really interesting stuff in terms of the way that it's presented, the way that they filmed it, because they weren't sure which guns they were going to be using. And so he essentially was reading them off through an earpiece, and he was still able to give as good of a delivery as he did. I thought that was great.
Here's another little bit that I am glad the MCU did a little bit of this later. But the idea that Nick Fury has history with Howard Stark, that he knew him, and that Nick Fury's been in this industry for so long, he's been in this field, that he kind of, that Howard Stark was one of the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D. and that Nick Fury was, a big, up and comer in S.H.I.E.L.D. and kind of this history here, and that there's people who kind of know more about Howard than Tony did himself. I mean, they do a little bit of that with in Avengers with Cap, and kind of the whole, oh, my dad liked you more than me kind of a thing. But this one scene here where Nick Fury's kind of talking about his dad and talking about the arc reactor and kind of talking about, where things were going. And I wish they had explored it a little bit more. I wish they had done more in this film. Again, they could have had the connection without the whole palladium poisoning thing.
Agreed. And I think that if you had Justin Hammer having a whole bunch of like little mini Iron Mans, then having one of them that was this, who was the key to it because of the arc reactors, and he has this personal beef with Tony Stark, and you have more interactions with Tony Stark. I don't know. Like at this point, Tony Stark has no connection to Vanko.
No.
He thinks Vanko's dead.
Yeah.
Like there's just kind of something wrong with this whole middle portion of the movie where the actual threat and villainization isn't real, I guess.
Well, Tony Stark,
he's fighting himself.
Yeah. Tony Stark should have had to learn something legitimate from Vanko. And I don't mean like a piece of technology, but there should have been a legitimate, like, he's got a point, or he actually, like, a moment where he had to understand and respect Vanko more than that one little scene they had together in prison. It's there should have been, they just should have had more everything. Do love Coulson.
I do love Coulson.
Every time he pops up, it's like, no, I'm always, even if they shoe him in a little bit, I'm always happy to have him here.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that, but at the same time, I still really like him.
Oh yeah,
I don't know. Does he feel shoehorned?
No, I meant that
he feels shoehorned.
No, I said that more in a, even if that's what it was, I still wouldn't mind because I enjoy him enough. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this scene here. We kind of glazed over the donut shop scene and kind of the revelation of Natalia as Natasha and Black Widow. And It's a pretty decent moment, and they actually reused that moment in an episode of What If, where she accidentally kills Tony Stark. But yeah, the suit all opened up.
Oh, this is
What
so
did you
good.
do? Yeah. You see, this is the performance. This is everything I want Hammer to be.
Yeah.
Because this makes him weird and eccentric like Tony Stark, but also competent.
Well, and whoever decided the little, I mean, I don't know if this was Sam Rockwell's thing with the lollipop. There's just this little tiny element to this whole thing, and it's just, it works.
It does. It really works.
Because it's
And-
like, yeah, the fact that he's got the white gloves on while he does this also. I mean, there's just so many little things that just make this scene work. To downtown.
Why would you want a pump action shotgun on something like this?
You wouldn't at all.
You want an
It's-
automatic shotgun.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
Oh,
It's
the
not
FN 2000 is.
no, that's not the FN gun that you would want on this suit. It's actually funny
No,
because
if anything, you'd want a P90.
yeah, it's actually funny that most of the guns that he points out are not the choices.
Like the grenade launcher there. But that right there.
That.
Okay. That's the gun that you want. That is the General Dynamics GAU 17A. And this is actually like one of the best renditions of a minigun in a movie, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
Because it's the actual gun, and they mount it correctly, and it has recoil.
yeah. Well, yeah, and it's an actual minigun. It's a proper 6-barrel. Like it is actually what's mounted on the side of helicopters.
It doesn't have random spinning. Like, for those of you who don't know, miniguns in movies will like spin up before they fire. That's not the way it works. The moment you fire, it starts spinning and it starts spitting bullets. They're very, very deadly.
I do love later when they have this thing actually used. Just a little joke at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All the ex-wife.
Which was improvised.
Oh, it's great. It's just funny. I mean, it's just a great scene. It's delivered well. It's funny. It just, has another. The fact that Rhodey is just staring at him too the whole time, like not saying anything until the very end here, is great.
Yeah. It's just, okay, so putting an FN in it, fine, whatever. Putting the minigun in it, okay. But a pump action shotgun
It's just
and
stupid.
a 9mm pistol?
Yeah.
Like, no. There's this. Upcoming here is a combination of one of my favorites and one of my least favorite Tony Stark moments. And they're like so intertwined. I love him building a miniature particle collider, okay? A miniature collider. I hate this whole thing with his dad. Well, I like the videos and the idea of him watching these videos and having the kind of candids with him and bloopers. But the rest of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this whole where he's flipping through the binders, you have these little home videos, like just the performances of both him and his dad. They are great. Plot-wise, how this like arrives at its conclusion is a little bit, contrived. But the character stuff in this is so good, and the performance.
Yeah, it has
so
one
good.
of my absolute least favorite plot devices, which is the map thing.
Oh, with the miniature city or the expo thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, and that's where the secret is. I'm like, oh, write it on a book, Inscribe it on something that's gonna last. You don't know if somebody's just gonna pick up that little table and throw it in the trash.
Yeah, it's a very, very bad plan for a supposed genius.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is I don't know why this just popped into my mind, but I'm curious what you think. Who's smarter, Tony or Howard?
Oh, Tony.
It was not just the limitation of his era and the technology that he had access to.
Yeah. I mean, there's no answer to that. I think that they're supposed to be kind of level. So something like this, I do like somebody leaving the message from beyond the grave. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is really well done. But I hate the secret being kept in the thing. I think that they're on par. I would describe them as being on par. The What If series uses Howard Stark to essentially, once he gets Tesseract energy, he's able to build something almost like a very rough early version of the Iron Man armor.
Oh yeah, that's because Steve
in
Rogers
the form of the
uses that,
Hydra
right?
Stomper.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I like it.
I also I mean, I'm a dad, and we've talked about this in other episodes, dealing with dads with Pat. I'm a sucker for the character of a father and kind of how that works, the complexities with trying to push your kids to do better than you while at the same time be a good dad. And the Howard stuff always just affected me. And then that's why in Endgame, oh my gosh, Tony Stark and his daughter was so, it hit me hard emotionally. We'll talk about when we get to that, years from now. But I'm always very affected by any plotline like this, like a dad trying his, even for Beyond the Grave, like trying to be something beyond what he was actually able to do on a daily basis. It's effective to me personally, even if it isn't done perfectly.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
I'm not to get personal, but I'm genuinely like, I'll be looking forward to if that ever happens. How it'll be for you, man. And we just leave it at that. So okay, earlier when this is did we see this office earlier in the film before Pepper took over?
No.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of, because it's supposedly the same office from that scene in Iron Man 1, right? Where Stain came in and like found her and the whole...
Yeah, it is supposed to be the same one. It has the same window layout. It has the same shelves layout, but she's in the active transition phase.
Yeah. So, but that like model wasn't there in that scene. So it just kind of appeared for this film, right?
I think the idea is that she's personalizing the office at this moment, so that's probably something she brought in, because it wasn't just Stain's computer. I think that it was also supposed to be Tony's office.
The legs on this desk, by the way, the big old... It's very masculine.
I think that the one in the first one is actually supposed to be Tony's computer, not Stain's. Yeah. It has like Tony's screensaver on it.
Yeah, it's Tony's office. That's what I mean. Like, this is supposed to be the same office. This is Tony's old office that she's taken over.
Yeah,
but
Tony would never have that on his desk, as we see.
Yes, that's true. No, but I mean, like that. This is my super long way of saying, like, the table is randomly just like sitting there. Like, was it on display? Did Tony have this, or was it like in storage and she pulled it out and like put it randomly? Because it looks like it was set up in the office and she like, kind of was getting ready to get rid of it, is like the inference there. So it makes me wonder, like, did Tony have this just like set up in his office and she's getting rid of it? Or...
I think that there's got to be a deleted scene for it, because it's just out of nowhere. It's just there.
Yeah, like he sees it in the video. Clue. Oh, this is he's got the Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This means something. This is important. And then it's just randomly the next room he walks into, it's right there. It's definitely it's a movie thing.
It very much is. I feel like there's something else that would have set that up. Because I don't know. I would have liked to see him digging through a storage locker to find it, and he finally does, type of thing. But they needed a reason for him to have this conversation with Pepper and have a encounter here with Black Widow.
Yeah. Is there also a reason given? Why is Happy not staying with him? Why does he go with Pepper? I think they should have had I don't know. It seemed odd that would have happened without Tony knowing about it.
I think that it would have to do with the amount of shield protection that is currently around Tony. I think that they would have forcefully or heavily suggested a temporary reallocation of Happy to Pepper's entourage. or it might have been something that Pepper is doing, or even Happy is doing, as a way of like punishing him and putting him on timeout. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just the thing.
Yeah. Those are really
It'd
red.
be easy to write a reason as to why that is the case.
I do like this little moment where he's just like, stop moving.
Yeah. Those little things can be annoying.
I thought the strawberries was kind of weird too. Just I don't know.
I think it's supposed to be showcasing his personality, in the way that he genuinely does want to do something nice for her, but he's also doesn't pay enough attention to know about her preferences.
Yeah,
her
her allergies.
individual problems. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, sorry. That's like, these are like the key to the future. That's like the worst possible way to get them home. Oh my gosh. It would never work. Okay.
I've done some weird things with cars.
Yeah. Man, this is definitely where technology sped this up. Imagine if he hadn't had Jarvis to help him with this. It would have been a long project to do this by hand.
Right?
I actually wish, I mean, I get why it's sleek and they're not there, but I kind of wish that his and this visually would have clouded it up a little bit, but I wish that his garage, his work area, had hollow projectors like around it, and you actually saw really faint, like shimmering, kind of like projectors all over that were making this work in his workshop. Just that tiny detail.
Yeah. Like, I hate this so much.
Well, it's good.
No, there was nothing else to it. I just hate this so much.
It's a very cool looking sequence. Like, it's a good VFX sequence. And the way that he's, kind of acting, I mean, this is just a dude who's like staring at nothing and it's going to be put in by a computer later. Like, it's all well done, but it's just absurd. Even for a comic movie, it's absurd.
Yeah, it's just because I love everything that comes after this. Like him building the reactor and everything, or not reactor.
Particle collider.
Collider, thank you. Yeah. Love that. Love that so much. But the atomic structure of this new element is hidden inside of this board game. Like, kill me now. Like, who wrote that? Like, I love so many of the people.
Well, and also looking at this
movie, but damn,
they also didn't make this part. Like, this is literally just a perfectly symmetrical repeating pattern sphere, structure. Like, there's nothing interesting about the structure they just put on on screen there, if that is an element.
Yeah,
it looks it's just perfectly boringly symmetrical, which is not how that works.
Which they then turn into a triangle.
Well, triangles are very cool. They're pointier than circles.
I don't like this the triangles.
I'm teasing.
I like the circular arc reactor.
Well, a triangle is inherently not a perpetual thing because you have all these really hard corners to turn.
I love the recurring motif in Iron Man movies, all three of them, of him destroying his house in various ways.
Yeah. Well, the third one, he really destroys it. Or gets it destroyed.
Also, you'll notice a very blink and you miss it call forward, you could say, or future callback
the Pegasus?
Of these crates being marked with Project Pegasus, which was the project that led to the creation of Captain Marvel and Captain Marvel.
I do love... So, okay, the idea that Coulson, didn't even notice that he was... I don't know, this whole sequence that he, has been able to do all this... S.H.I.E.L.D. really wasn't keeping a good eye on him. Either that, or they just knew what he was doing and didn't care. I don't know.
I think that they were like, oh, he's building something, that's fine. I think that they got to a point where they were like, we need to find out what it is he's doing.
So, I it's I've never. Did they ever bring back what that shield prototype for Cap? I mean, obviously it's not Cap's shield because his shield is just a
No,
solid.
it's
But it's just totally just a
it's
little Easter egg that means nothing, basically, right?
essentially yes. It's supposed to be a callback or a kind of reference to what's his face having worked with Captain America, Howard Stark, and I think that if you read between the lines, again, you're trying to write this as like a novel or something, or jump forward to Captain America: Civil War or something. You could introduce it as Howard Stark potentially trying to build Captain America's shield without any vibranium. The same effects, the same abilities.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have access to any vibranium, and he just never finished it.
So
that's how I would figure it out.
Yeah. So I work with a lot of gas pipe. I did for a long time in my job, doing fireplaces and stuff. And I love the fact that he's got a legitimate, just like rigid, big pipe wrench there, which is like that's exactly what you would go buy at a hardware store. It's
yeah.
It's so okay. It's his poorhouse. It's really his poorhouse. So he's just like, I don't know. This is just BS right here.
Yeah. And then, like, I love the building. I love Tony being genius who's building stuff and bashing stuff up. Like, give me more of that, right? And then they have this scene coming up here where he actually inserts it into his chest. I hate it. I hate it so much. It makes me groan. It makes me cringe.
What about it makes you?
The way that it's filmed, the bright light enveloping him, the way that he's yelling, that tastes like coconut. It's just like.
Oh yeah. I mean, okay. This definitely, I think, was a marketing decision. I mean, I don't know for sure. It feels like the design of this was entirely a marketing decision. It feels like something designed to sell toys.
I think one of the original ideas behind it was to have him like consistently upgrading all of his stuff and like it being a big thing throughout all three of the movies. And they even tried to carry this over in Iron Man 3 of upgrading his arc reactor chest piece. Because in the third one, they have him even get rid of it, right?
Sorry, really fast. The whole I can make salute. It's just a fun little gag, and then the reveal of his whip. I appreciated that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I totally interrupted you, but
okay. No, I was just waxing rhapsodic.
Yeah. This is like the closest Hammer ever appears to acting like a threat here.
Yeah.
Like, take the bird, take his boots, the way he, like, actually is pissed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's just
be
so
nice
mean.
to the bird, guys. Like, oh, taking his pillow and his shoes and just, like, man, tattoos everywhere.
So cute. Yeah.
You don't get Justin Hammer yelling very much.
Yeah.
Do you feel like
the best part with them though?
Yeah, but say, do they from this point too? I feel like they really start running, kind of playing catch up here. Like you mentioned, the third act I think is the weakest of this film. There are some good moments, like that trailer shot of Tony and Rhodes together is awesome, and a few of the little moments. But they just feel like they're just going, well, we can't be longer than 2 hours. Crap, we got to finish a bunch of stuff up. That's how it feels a little bit.
Come on, make it 2 hours and 20 minutes and just expand the characters.
Yeah.
Don't be
I don't speak Russian.
I'm sorry, I'm just watching because
I know
Sam Rockwell's so good.
He is, yeah. I'm totally just caught up here.
Genuinely, like the best part for this actor for this
Well,
character.
yeah, if we had well, and I think if Rockwell had played it more, well, not played it more, because I don't know. I genuinely think he was doing what he was asked to do. But if you had
Mhm.
more of this kind of two sides to him, you had the public, kind of, trying to act a little bit like Tony, being kind of fun, doing the dance he does later, kind of all that stuff. But then behind closed doors, you had this more menacing, mean, mean spirited guy who's prideful and constantly just jealous of Tony. And if you had that, that back and forth.
Yeah. See, this scene, I did like this one because, they had the babysitters and then it doesn't show anything. But you have that moment where the two guys are just hanging behind him. He's got the blood on his hands.
Yeah, that's all you
He's
need.
obviously done something clever with the phones. Like, yeah.
This is where you're doing a lot of storytelling outside of just their conversation here.
Mm-hmm. And, yeah.
I feel like Jarvis could have traced that faster. Just saying.
Unless Svanko was doing something really suspicious on the other side.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, it's 343 on his.
That's right here. I hate this. Like the you see this stuff withdrawing. I don't like this whole thing.
Tastes like.
I think it's dumb. I think it looks bad.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, it is definitely a little over the top. Yeah.
And those things sitting there, all next to this expo, just make me think of Men in Black.
It definitely makes me think of the World Fair in New York City.
Well, that's what this is supposed to be. Essentially.
At the same place.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is supposed to be because it was the side of the World's Fair, which is the original Stark Expo is supposed to be kind of like a World's Fair thing.
This is improv,
dance.
right?
Yeah, most of what he did was improv, apparently.
Yeah, he's just having fun.
Mm-hmm. And I do like the drone idea as like the things you can kill,
Yeah.
It's not just a bunch of guys in suits. It provides the ability to do a lot of action.
Yeah.
Kind of like the aliens in the Avengers. And I think that it fits well for this setting.
When you're trying to make the PG... Yeah, when you're trying to make the crossover, the kiddish friendly PG-13, you need to have things for the good guys to shoot. But you also don't want to just be murdering a bunch of guys. And you can't have Nazis in every movie. So, you have the easy...
drones.
Yeah. You come up with, aliens, drones, or animals. Those are your choices, right? Oh, no, sorry.
Maybe
aliens, robots.
If you're going hardcore.
Yeah. But, in a PG-13 comic movie, you have, occasionally mercenaries, but, robots, animals, and aliens. Those are your choices.
Yeah. I do like the inclusions of the weapons on these things. Because they are real. I believe that the army is the Bushmaster.
Yeah, there's the subtle differences in how they look and the color scheme and the way that they're kind of the weapon systems are. I mean, it's fun. I'm also a sucker for any time you get a good band rendition of the Marine.
Yeah, I mean those are straight up Stinger missiles on the Navy drones.
The
I
Tiger Strike camo.
I like those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they look cool for sure.
Mm-hmm. The Marines and Air Force just have these like little wrist cannons. But I like this presentation. I think it looks good. Humanoid drones kind of bother me on principle because
it doesn't make any sense.
They're not super sensible.
Well, actual drones, like what we're actually doing in the real world, which is drones that just fly and are armed but quiet, easy to control. You can mass produce them. Like the actual drones being used in Ukraine and being demonstrated in frightening levels, around the world, are absolutely the future of warfare.
I mean, did you see the video of the drone from Ukraine that was designed to just dump ignited thermite onto trenches.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I did. I really, really like War Machine in this film. He feels like the classic comic book War Machine. I mean, he's got some cool renditions later in the MCU, but this is like what I think of when I think of the comic book, with the actual minigun, just bulked up, the color scheme just very, steel gray and a little bit shinier silver. I just, I think War Machine looks as at the best tier he ever looked, in my opinion.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think that this version of War Machine and Endgame, and not Endgame, the other one, Infinity Wars version of them are the best. I really like Civil War, but there's just something about these two that are just put a little bit of a one up on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just also too, Iron Man just looks weird with the triangle in his chest. It just looks off.
Yeah. That's exactly it. I don't like the triangle.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a good moment. Like the idea of Rhodey being like the War Machine suit being compromised, which they do again kind of in Iron Man 3. But I don't know. I like it.
Yeah, that's good. I do think if you shattered all that glass over these crowds, you would have a little more carnage than they can show in a PG-13 film.
But it's safety glass.
It's safety glass.
I'm sure it just cubed.
Interesting that they still have their radios. I mean, it makes the scene better. It doesn't make any sense if he's hacked him, but it also does make the sequence better because you get to have them still dialoguing, which is fun.
I agree, but also if I was designing something for the military that way, I wouldn't remove just a generic radio system, kind of a backup.
Yeah.
For safety's sake, Yeah.
I appreciate that only the Air Force drones can fly.
I'm sorry?
I appreciate that only the Air Force drones can fly.
Right?
Yeah, it's a tiny detail, but the rest of them have to like run out and try to create support, do using their own different things. I also love when the army ones kind of dig in and they have to kind of like anchor to use their guns. And I mean, it is a fun. I don't love the third act of this film, but there is some fun little action beats for sure in this sequence.
Oh yeah, there's certain things that I really like. That Iron Man entrance where everybody like stands up and cheers, and there's like don't do this right now, and he's just like he's making nice and just like wave to the crowd. We have a problem, and we need to be like there's little subtle things like that.
Yeah,
I like it.
Oh yeah,
but I love the idea of Pepper having to deal with Hammer as a rival, and I think that if they had made him more competent, it would have provided a greater character growth and character sensibility for her to have to deal with him that way.
Well, good, because he does kind of immediately become kind of a sniveling wuss here at the end.
Mm-hmm. The time frame on this is also effed.
Oh yeah, yeah. The amount of time. Well, action scenes always take longer in film than they actually would be because it's just like things move faster, and if this was really happening, this is like 10 minutes at most, this entire sequence, but they have time to drive over and do the whole thing. Is that what you're kind of talking about?
Yep, exactly that.
Yeah.
But that's the Bushmaster.
Yep.
Which is for those of you who don't know, it's what is it? The
it's a
M242?
Yeah, it's a 25 millimeter cannon. It's what the the Bradley vehicle uses as primary. I mean, it's a very effective.
Technically, a chain gun.
Yeah, but a slow enough firing one to do some work.
Here we have one of those things that was retconned in.
Yeah, this was not meant to be this at the beginning.
Annoyingly.
Go ahead.
Essentially, that is supposed to be Tom Holland's Peter Parker. Which would fit for this being New York. You don't see his face.
Is the age work out?
They're just kind of funny. That depends, given how much Spider-Man Homecoming screwed up the timeline.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, if that was like an 8-year-old boy, and it would be further 6 years until Homecoming, it could work, but not quite.
because in Civil War, he's
Um,
what, 16 or 15?
Yeah, 15, I think.
I do love the car alarms.
Yeah,
It just
good little scene there.
again, the cute little scenes. One big thing I want to start talking about it now because it's going to go by so fast, which is the point I'm about to make. I kind of hate how fast when he finally shows up in his suit, just the speed that it's like, oh, it's over. They beat him.
Yeah, they
It's
don't
less than a
have
minute.
good final fight.
No, it's a horrible final fight. I mean, as much as, you know, like when we get to it, like Black Panther's, you know, final CG fight's kind of rough. And, you know, it's not like, it's just, it's so lackluster in a movie that's effects work is so good. And their sequence, you know, on the F1 track was really good. And it's just like, they shoot
and they
once.
just blew up a lot of actual cars.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good action sequence, you know?
Yeah, like you finally have them face to face again, and it's just, it's the worst bad action sequence to me because it's boring once Whiplash shows up.
No, I completely
There's
agree.
no strategy that there's
me because
good.
Even looking at something like Thor: Dark World, they had a competent and funny and interesting final fight between Thor and Malekith. It's not the most memorable in the world, but you know, it's a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. Black Widow's hair. Which movie had the best hair?
So I kind of love redheads. Again, Emily Blunt as Commander Shepard would be the greatest thing ever because Commander Shepard's a redheaded femme shep for me for life. I love red hair. I think her hair in this movie is awesome. It's not practical in the least, but just as a guy, yeah. Sorry, I'll just leave it at that.
I think that this one's quite good. I'm a big fan of Civil War myself, but
I think Civil War is really good. I actually really liked her in Winter Soldier also. I mean, I think it works well curly, but I like straight hair on girls for the most part. But
all that I know is that of both of the Avengers, the first two Avengers movies were both the worst ones.
Yeah,
Joss Whedon shouldn't be allowed near her hair.
No.
But I like this. I think that it's a competent action sequence.
Yeah.
It does the famous
scissor
head flip.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, she's got her moves, and they kind of stick with it. And I feel like Scarlett Johansson does pull the little mace here at the end. It works. You just, I'm done. It's Happy's fight is a fun little bit of because I know, isn't he in the comics? Doesn't he have a history as a boxer?
Yeah, and I love little bites his ear like he's
Tyson.
Freaking what's his face, Tyson?
Yeah. No, I like Johansson. I think Johansson is a beautiful woman, and I think that she's great in this role. But and I think this is the best hair that she had, in my opinion. But I also, like I said, I do have a thing for straight hair, so that's why I like Winter Soldier here also.
I also genuinely like her acting in this movie. I think that it shows her like versatility as a spy really good. I think I'd put it kind of up there with how they've written her in like maybe like the top 3 of her appearances, because her character arc in the actual Black Widow movie was horrendous.
Yeah.
I really liked. I think her best is going to be Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I like Winter Soldier. I do think that as much as, you know, there's issues with her character in the first Avengers, I do like her introduction in that film. You know, where she's in the chair and that whole thing. I mean, it's a little more comic booky, but it's also just fun. The idea that she's in very good, she's in control and just, doing her whole thing. But it's hard because, again, I think that she could have been done better in this film, but I do also think that she's used as a scapegoat by fans who want to criticize legitimate things in this film, but use her as the punching bag for it.
I very much so agree. One of the things I didn't know about this whole sequence here is that this, even though it is augmented with some CGI, the set here is actually quite practical with this garden.
Really?
Because I always thought that it looked really bad. But The sorry, the back and forth here is pretty funny.
It's gonna it's good.
Like,
I
he
was gonna
has a
make an
point.
omelet and tell you. Yeah.
She did not receive information well from him. He was going to talk to her. She has no right to be mad.
Yeah, he's right to worry about. You don't just have that conversation without. I love that tapping on the face. Oh gosh. Anyways, yeah, there's a lot happening here in a hurry. Well, and it's interesting because we have this great sequence before Whiplash shows up, in which nothing happens.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of this set was practical, and I don't know, I like it.
Yeah.
The
only thing that I'm a little bit bummed about, I mean, I know that his minigun gets like cut off by Whiplash a little bit later. When Tony grabs his minigun and like stops it from rotating, but it keeps firing, that would have broken it right there. The fact that it still works is a little bit of a, it's a tiny bit of a. This whole thing.
I like the strategy.
Yeah, the strategy, the disagreement.
Great.
Well, because they would think very different.
It's just like, no, it is your fault. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, because they would have. It's a kill box. I do like the little bit of a military versus civilian thinking about this, and just because they're also friends bickering. You kind of get both of those aspects in at the same time.
Yeah. Also, just kind of the vanity. But also apparently they can all fly, but only the Air Force ones are coming after them.
You're right. Yeah, I said that earlier, and only the Air Force ones did fly at the beginning. That's an interesting.
I think that was an intentional choice. I think this was probably some sort of reshoot where they like wanted them to be. Oh, that scene.
Yeah.
The face locking scene. It's so good. It's one of those things that you find in like every single Marvel like retrospective AMV. It's good. Yeah. This is a great scene.
Well, it's a great. I also I appreciate the oil like splattering on Warhammer War Machine there. I also I
see some on Iron Man here.
Yeah, I appreciate that the drones are not even remotely as powerful as the legitimate suits that Tony would make. As far as just how tough they are.
Yeah.
Although I do feel like this is one of those that Tony kind of shows off here. Even though they obviously would have been fine if he hadn't done this, but he only had this one. He kind of blows his cool big thing before Whiplash shows up.
It's I was gonna say something about this, and I don't remember what it was. Oh, I like that the weapons you can actually see on him are the actual weapons that Hammer used earlier.
Yeah.
You actually do see the FN 2000, which. I mean, an armor-piercing FN round, the FN 57 round, some sort of like steel core soft tip thing, would do well against armor. I just don't think that it would chew up the armor like that.
No, the only things that he had that would have really done work is the minigun and the launcher. And, and the repulsors. I mean, he's got the repulsors still. It's not like he doesn't have those.
And the idea of using like a freaking. What do you call it? Like a 9mm against those things is laughable.
It'd be like shooting BBs at him. Also, too, I still want to know how War Machine reloads standard guns that are strapped to his arms. Like, how does he reload them?
I'm assuming that, like, if I was building it, I would just add some sort of auto feed mechanism, remove the magazine entirely.
So I almost feel like this is just so here he shows up. I feel like this is just a lazy version of the end of the first one, where it's like, okay, he's in a suit, he's powerful, and they just do nothing. I'm sorry, it's so disappointing. I know I've like harped on this now, but I also
do you notice the design of the suit where it's designed to be kind of samurai-esque with like the almost skirt and the shoulders and everything?
A little bit, yeah, the high collar and
yeah. And the suit itself is unremarkable. It's a bland color, bland faceplate. It's, I don't know.
Well, and
it's just an unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, they also show it in very dim lighting here. They don't give it any chance to, even if it did look cool, it doesn't ever get a chance to be seen. I do enjoy that tiny bit of like the gear kind of reining the whip in. I do appreciate that little shoulder detail they gave it there.
Like in this 30 seconds of fighting, there are some actual good moments, but look, it's already over.
Yeah.
And they didn't even move. One of the things about fight scenes is that they're often so much better when things like they move to different areas, you know?
Yeah, they should have gotten out of this park. I also hate the fact that I get it. You want to show your guy's face, but the fact that he just opens his helmet for some stupid reason, but there's no story reason at all. Like he showed earlier that he could recognize that Tony was about to do something when he shot his little dart things, and he closed his mask instantly. So he already demonstrated an ability to turtle up when he saw danger. But he just stares ahead like an idiot.
Stupid.
Yeah, it is the idiot. The villain died because he suddenly became a moron, and I hate that story trope so much when that's used in film.
Same. Like this final fight scene is one of the movie's most egregious failures.
Yeah.
Like what everybody remembers is the ending, like with him and Rhodey fighting the drones.
Yeah.
That's what people remember about this movie. They don't remember Whiplash or Vanko. Yeah. Beeping red thing, run.
Yeah, but to say, isn't that kind of the most universal? Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again,
somehow they take this character and put her into the final battle in Endgame.
Yeah. Well,
I suppose she had 5 years to train and learn to defend herself. I get that.
Yeah. But there is the villain loses because he becomes an idiot, and Pepper, who's been shown to be a very competent character, all of a sudden needs to be rescued because she loses her ability to think quickly on her feet.
Yep. Well, you know about the alternate ending, right?
Oh yeah, where he's not actually dead, and there's a second confrontation and some kind of nano ball or something.
Yeah, so there had been a moment earlier where he was showing her some technology that he was working on that was a nanite ball, and it's something that she kind of plays with through the movie, almost like a stress ball. And it's a ball of nanites. And then, yeah, he escapes the fight instead of killing himself, Vanko. And he ambushes them in this scene. And he wraps a small whip around her neck, wraps a whip around his neck, and he's going to kill her, and there's something he wants from them, and blah, blah, blah. And very similar to what he did with Rhodey there, he throws him the nano ball, he's able to do something with it that gets them out of it, and he's arrested.
They wanted to potentially... Did they want to try to save him for potential future use?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of funny that they... I did like this.
You guys are like two seals fighting over a grape. That's a good line.
It is.
Get a rope. Yeah, I will say too, again, Tony and Don Cheadle have some legitimate, and not even just this film, it's in most of the films, they almost always have at least one good moment together.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of Captain America Civil War, they have some great moments together in Iron Man 3. Yeah, they're a good pairing. I'm glad that they recast him.
Yeah. Well, because you need actors who can sell that these guys have been friends for a long time.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people don't like this scene. They find it a little egregious. What do you think?
I think it's contrived.
I could see that.
It feels.
I think it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. This scene feels like a studio note.
Yeah. Like having Agent Romanoff's assessment, I think that fits with the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Him just suddenly being in a warehouse, hanging out, talking about the Avengers is strange.
Yeah. Well, and it's so abrupt. It just goes from the rooftop to here you go. There's nothing. There's no connective tissue other than, well, we've got to get this out of the way because we're now in active development of the Avengers at this point behind the scenes.
And yeah, I mean, not just active development, but like production.
Because let's see, this came out in
Mhm.
2010,
10,
and Avengers came out in 13 or 12.
12.
12. Man, that was fast.
It was very fast. I actually saw it in England where it was titled Avengers Assemble.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think I saw Avengers in theater probably 3 or 4 times here.
I saw it 3 times, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, honestly, it was the first time I had been in the theater that many times for the same film since Lord of the Rings were in theaters.
Hmm.
It was
I saw the 2009 Star Trek 4 times. Only paid for it once.
okay. That's all right.
Myself. People wanted to see it with me, so they bought my ticket. I didn't sneak
Now,
in. I've never snuck into a movie.
yeah, now this scene I love. This is just a fun. This belongs in an Iron Man film. I feel like just a fun little
Yes.
jab at the senator and having the AC/DC playing. It's just like this is a good scene. And
Yes.
this senator, he play. I forget this actor's name. I'm sorry, but the whole it's annoying how much a little prick. It's delivered so well. It's a great line. At least to me, it is.
I always liked this actor. I always remembered him as the voice of the turtle from Over the Hedge.
Oh, that's right. That's right. How annoying a little prick can be, isn't it? It's just it's great. Sorry,
And
I'm
I think
enjoying
he's
this.
right for this role because of how fake his face is.
Yeah, yeah. He looks like just his smile, and yeah, it looks like he immediately looks like a politician, like just the kind of politician that. How did he ever get elected?
I think that he's a senator. Aren't senators appointed?
No, senators aren't appointed. I mean, they're okay. We could go into like deep state stuff, but in theory, no.
I was gonna say.
I mean, if we're taking things on face value, they are elected.
And he's an agent to Hydra, don't forget.
This is the wrong podcast for that conversation. Oh. So
Well, it's just like I congressional elections and stuff, but I guess I just don't pay attention to who's running for Senate because for some reason I feel like
people do actually run. I mean, all of the senators, congressmen, the president, those are all you vote for their name. It's on the ballot. But,
hey, number one Google search: are senators elected or appointed? Okay, I'm not crazy. Prior to 1913,
they used to be.
State legislatures chose state senators. Okay, that's what I remembered. I'm like, I swear senators were appointed at one point.
Yeah, 100 years ago.
I like history, okay?
I love history. You're remembering something from 100 years ago. Do you know
yeah, when you're learning about how they built the system,
I know.
You don't always remember how they changed it.
You know that you can only vote if you own land, right?
Oh, so I can vote and you can't.
Oh, dang it.
What the?
Oh, gosh.
I mean, it's a townhouse, so it's a very tiny amount of land. It just goes up.
You just own the square footage of the bottom floor? Is that like your total? Yeah. And a parking space?
No, not even a parking space.
Not even a parking space. Anyways, okay.
But
so
Iron Man 2.
What a tangent. Oh, gosh.
This is what it's actually like to sit with us when we're watching movies.
Yeah. If we ever start a real podcast, man, I'll just go off the rails.
Oh, goodness gracious.
This movie gets ranked, near the bottom in a lot of, and I think that it's
justly so.
I think that it's bottom third, but I think the hard part with me is there's only one or two MCU films that I would objectively say are bad movies. And so it's always a little hard to rank them. Like, this isn't a bad movie. This is not as nearly as good as the first one. This doesn't come close to the highs of Winter Soldier and Guardians and some of those, but it's not a bad movie.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. In fact, the only MCU movie that I objectively call bad is Black Widow. Like, you and I will talk about it someday, but there's more redeeming qualities to Captain Marvel than there are bad qualities.
Mm-hmm.
it is a competent film for what it is, with some massive problems.
Yeah. What about the
where
Marvels?
Black Widow is just garbage. I didn't see it.
I haven't either, but I've heard that it's rough. I love that.
I know that I did watch one scene from it that was absolutely incredible and hilarious. That involved a bunch of people getting eaten by cats and a bunch of people telling them, "Don't worry, let yourself get eaten by cats."
I love
really funny.
So really fast, sorry. I was going to say the musical transition we just had in the credits here from AC/DC to like this very like 1950s like happy parade music was like, oh wow, that's right, they did this. I was also surprised they did not do any kind of animated credits in this. It just went right to standard scrolling credits.
I don't think they had time. So one of the things about this movie is that it only had 22 months for production, because as soon as Iron Man 1 was a success, the studio said, "We're doing another one in 2 years." And they didn't get the okay from the director, they didn't get the okay from the stars, and they had to renegotiate all these contracts that took like 2 months.
Yeah.
And it was rough.
Yeah.
And then they had to find a new roadie and all kinds of stuff. So mess behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But this movie, like I've asked before, Brian, how would you fix this?
How would I fix it? I would definitely streamline. I would get rid of the palladium poisoning, that entire line. Just ditch it. I would, as we already talked about, I would absolutely get. I would not have Tony continue to think that I wouldn't do the whole fake Whiplash is dead. I would have him escape from prison and remain a menace. I like the idea of him getting arrested and then him using his own competence to get out. I don't think he needed help. I think you would have had a kind of almost a dual villain where you had I actually, and this isn't fully fleshed out, but off the top of my head, I don't think I would have had Whiplash and Hammer working together at all. I think I would have had Tony having to kind of deal with Whiplash while at the same time dealing with Hammer's continued attempts to take him out somehow, or like to challenge him is a better way of putting it. Not take him out, but challenge him for government contracts, for a place in, and doing it through proxies. Come up with some other villains that maybe Hammer is kind of enlisting to help, using his technology, and people who to maybe not point it out to just come up with some way to kind of have Hammer be a villain, but again somebody who presents very charismatic and charming publicly, but behind the scenes is a little more menacing, and and then also having Tony dealing with that while also dealing with his own personal demons and his dad and all of that through Whiplash.
Mm-hmm.
And just a little bit with Nick Fury and Black Widow, that's still there. The Avengers idea is still there. That I like the idea of Nick Fury giving him some information about his dad, giving him kind of the archives. Like here's stuff from S.H.I.E.L.D. we've never let out, but it's time for you to get this. I think some of that stuff totally, But okay, really quickly, let's pause and do this scene.
I think this is a great after credits scene.
Oh, this is a perfect tease.
Yeah. I love teases. I like the after credits jokes. Those can be fun. Some of them are disappointing, but something like this, it really makes you just go, huh.
Well, and this was a tease. This was a tease to something that was actually happening. Unlike in the last couple of years, we've got all these stupid teases to things that will probably never happen. And, it's just, this was like, Thor was already, halfway made at this point?
Yeah. They used the set.
Yeah. So it was a great tease because it's all you need, and the little lightning sound effect there. It's great. That was perfectly done, in my opinion, as an after credit tease.
The current Marvel habit of it's been like literally 4 or 5 movies now that have had an after credit scene or mid credit scene that introduces a character that is played by somebody who is some sort of major face in some in a TV show or movie. They're a culturally known face or person, only to not follow it up.
Yeah, well, they're teasing it when there's no active production happening on their project, which is just
it's bad.
It pisses me off, honestly.
It's irresponsible. Yeah, same.
Okay, but how would you fix this movie?
I would need to troubleshoot it a little bit. You would need Tony dealing with something. I don't like the palladium poisoning. I think it's stupid. Going into the demon in a bottle where it's substance abuse, or not even necessarily substance abuse, but reckless behavior. Um, you would need to find something along those lines that give him
Why?
a recklessness, a spinning out of control that he needs to fix about himself. I think that's
Why?
important.
I
And I think part
Go
of
ahead,
it,
sorry. I'll shut up. Go ahead.
I think part of it would be very much dealing with his internal problems with his father. I don't necessarily know, like, in retrospect now, with what they've done with the character of Howard Stark, especially in Endgame, it would be kind of disingenuous to sit there and say, oh, make him a villain. But make it so that this guy has some genuinely dark, dark secrets in his past that Tony is having trouble reconciling. And it's sending him down kind of a reckless path. He does need something, maybe he is dealing with, his arc reactor's not working right or something, or it's not powerful enough and he needs an upgraded version. And there is a secret to that that's in his father stuff that's given to him by Nick Fury. Not necessarily like, oh, secret in treasure map bullshit. But having something where he's dealing with his father's past. Then you have the character of Vanko and his relationship and his father's relationship to the Stark family. And have that be a major point, especially in dealing with the relationship between father and son. Showing a good relationship between Vanko and his father, even though they had nothing, versus a strained and incomplete relationship between Tony and his father, even though they had everything. And have Justin Hammer in there. He's trying to compete. He can't compete. He's smart. He's villainous. And what he does is when he sees Vanko go up against Stark, he's like, this guy has the arc reactor technology. And so he does help him to break out of prison and then kind of kidnaps him. I would have it mostly so that it's Vanko breaking out himself. But there is this kind of like, let's try and work together. And you end up with like 3 different Iron Mans, but they're inferior Iron Mans. I would use the character of Ghost, who was in one of the original scripts, who is later used as a villain in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and will be appearing in the upcoming, time of recording, Thunderbolts film. I would use something kind of like a Crimson Dynamo, who has some vendetta against Stark or something, where he has these people who can use these suits, and Vanko's one of them. And there's a menace that they provide, because what he's actually doing is trying to develop the War Machine armor and similar. He's creating threats. So he allows Crimson Dynamo to exist, in order to show like, oh, this is a guy who wants to bring back the USSR, and yada yada yada. Meanwhile, Vanko is building his own suit in secret. And when it comes to the climax of the movie, and you'd have to be writing this thing very carefully in order to get to the climax properly, because even I don't even know how you would write out all the little details that get there. You have the issue of Rhodey's suit being compromised, and Black Widow needs to go fix it. And then that's when you would have her fight the character of Ghost, who is much more of an infiltrator. You would have Pepper and Happy dealing with Hammer himself, because they've dealt with Tony Stark at his worst, and this is just an inferior version of Tony Stark. And then you could have Crimson Dynamo, who's this kind of like over-the-top straw man of a villain, and that would give Rhodey somebody to deal with. While Iron Man is trying to clean up all the drones and all this stuff and deal with everything at once, that's when you have Vanko. And he does kind of need to, like, this is the personal fight. This is the heart of the movie in a conflict. And he does need to acknowledge that this is somebody who was wronged unfairly by his father. And that this is a vengeance that he can't stop. He can't fix it. And the only thing he can do is end it.
Yeah.
And hope that he doesn't create problems like that in the future.
Yeah.
And you could create this overarching theme. You could have an exciting climax. You can have the characters each showing off and having their own little things. Maybe it's too complicated. Maybe it's too big. Maybe it's too expensive.
Yeah.
But in my head, I'm just like, there's this script that they had written and all these ideas that they did have, and I think that they were better ideas than what we got.
Yeah. And I think Whiplash's death should have been a moment for Tony Stark. It should have been this poignant, reflective event in Tony Stark's life that was another big building block into him going from, arrogant, bratty kid to the self-sacrificing man we see by Endgame. That it should have been a step in that direction, and instead it just is nothing.
Yeah,
it is ultimately
I agree.
completely meaningless. His presence in Tony's story amounts to nothing of consequence, and that ultimately is worse than being bad. Is being just irrelevant. It's it's a story version of it's not hate versus love. It's indifference. It's just they just don't even care. That's a worse sin of being bad. Like, I wish they had taken a swing there, and even if they hadn't totally nailed it, at least we could appreciate what they were trying to do. And instead, we just got a great actor in a follow up to one of the best comic book movies ever made, and the villain is just the beginning of an unfortunate trend, like we talked about earlier, where it's just a nothing villain that ultimately means nothing to the overarching story or to the heroes that were fighting them. And it's just sad, because there's so much to like in this movie. There's so much amazing talent behind this movie, and they just missed the mark so poorly in that particular area.
And I don't blame what's his face at all, Jon Favreau, the director. He not even the writer, Justin Theroux.
Oh, he's a great writer.
Tropic Thunder.
Yeah, he's a good writer.
Yeah, this was entirely studio interference and not giving the production team enough time to actually make a competent movie. Yeah,
it's unfortunate, but I mean, at the same time, this did move us, towards it's yeah. I don't hate this movie. I enjoy watching it. There's a lot that I enjoy watching in it, and ultimately, it still did keep things moving. It wasn't the belly flop that like Spider-Man 3 was or X-Men Last Stand was. I mean, so that's the thing is too. You got to kind of keep it in perspective, where the problems with this film in comparison to where other superhero follow-ups have just whiffed it. I mean, this wasn't that level, not even close. And people who try to act like it was are not being
objective.
Yeah, they're not being objective.
Yeah, this movie makes me sad in places for what could have been, or just kind of frustrated. It doesn't actively make me angry like X-Men 3 or something did. Yeah. We should probably wrap it up.
We should.
But this movie did make a pretty good profit.
Yeah, like $650-ish?
It was around 100 and because it was made around like 185 million, 200 million, and it made 625 million. So good profit. Yeah. One of the things that was pointed out by multiple different people as I was listening to them is that this was a time when they were moving forward with this big shared universe, but these movies weren't making $1 billion. They were making decent profits.
Yeah, they're making,
and they kept moving them towards something.
Yeah.
Where all of these universes have tried to be established, and they just cancel them right away because they're not. The first one isn't making $1 billion.
Yeah,
that's just that slow and steady wins the race thing is really true.
Yeah, I mean, Phase 1, nothing broke $1 billion until Avengers, not even close.
Mm-hmm. No,
I mean, we think of Iron Man, the first one, as being just this massive hit, and it was a massive hit. But like by modern standards, like it was a big movie. It did good money, but it made what, 550, something like that.
This movie is actually, I want to say that this is the highest earning Iron Man movie.
Oh, no. Iron Man 3 was $1 billion movie.
Right. That's right. But this was,
It did very
Wow,
well.
The Iron Man 3 thing threw me off.
Well,
This movie did extremely well, but
it was by far
even
the
so-
highest grossing pre-Avengers movie. Like, it not even close. It did way
Yeah, but it
way
was
better money than Thor and First Avenger.
it was still the 7th most profitable movie of 2010.
Didn't beat Twilight though, unfortunately. That just makes me sad. It
let's
makes
see,
me sad for America that Twilight, Eclipse, or whatever it was that year made more money than this. I'm just like, because
I mean, actually, I was it. Was it that one?
it was the next one up. I
because
looked
the
at that
number
list
one
earlier
was-
today.
Okay, because that's right. It was Eclipse. Because okay,
So
to
bad.
be totally honest, Eclipse is like one of the better of the Twilight movies.
They're all bad. Oh my. Okay, sorry. Hot
but, like,
Twilight take here.
Shrek 4. Okay.
So,
Toy Story, Alice in Wonderland, which is awful. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, Inception, Shrek, Eclipse, and then Iron Man.
and Inception was good.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, just to drop this and leave. I actually only kind of like the first Twilight film, and then the rest of them I think are all garbage.
I actually kind of disagree. I think the second one is better.
It might be.
I recently rewatched them because
What is
my
wrong
wife
with you?
had never seen them, and she loves vampire stuff. And I'm like, oh, we're gonna watch Twilight.
it's so bad.
I had to grow up with these. You have to watch these too.
I've even read. Don't ask me why. This is not the time and place for it. I've even read the books. It's
I
just
did
so
too.
bad. It's so bad.
I don't believe in criticizing something like that unless you've actually read it.
No, I agree, but yeah, we should do some bonus Twilight episodes now. With that, thank you all for listening. We thank you so much for joining us. We are we're just having a lot of fun here, and we will be back next week with the Incredible Hulk.
Incredible Hulk. Rawr!
Another miss.
And then we're taking a little bit of a break, and then we're jumping into
Yeah.
Captain America and Thor, which I'm very excited about. And I actually really do like the Incredible Hulk, and you'll hear me wap.
But we're going to take a little detour in the middle, back into some. If anybody was hoping for some more fantasy, your wish will soon be fulfilled, as we will be doing some fantasy soon. All right. Good night, everybody.
It was me. I asked for it. Good night.
There's doors and corners, kid. If you don't clear the room, if you don't come in slow, that room will eat you.